Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 35 of Unlimited Opinions. I'm Adam Bishop.
I'm Mark Bishop.
We are, of course, reading Jake Jackson's Myths and Legends, a book covering world mythologies from
Around the world.
We are still focusing on Scottish myths and legends. In this section, we're going to be covering two chapters from the book, Legends of Ghosts and Origin and Didactic Legends. So we'll start with some ghost stories and then move into some stories that explain how some things came to be and certain life lessons that every Scottish man should do.
Yeah, like eat your porridge.
Yes, like eat your porridge. That's one of the main lessons, actually, is to eat your porridge, believe it or not.
Well, it's important to have a good meal.
That is true.
I didn't know it was a, moral thing to do or thing to ward off evil spirits, but
Apparently it is.
Scottish thinks there is.
What did you think about this chapter overall? Or these two chapters, I should say.
Yeah, I didn't really like them.
Really?
Yeah.
I figured you wouldn't.
They're kind of pointless. And somewhat random. There's a couple stories about, how this giant argued with his wife and and ensuing chaos created this knoll or that lock or whatever. That was somewhat interesting, but
That was the one you found most interesting.
I don't know.
Okay.
On the levels of interest, they were all low.
Really? I mean, I liked a lot of these stories.
Really?
I thought a lot of them were pretty good.
Yeah.
But I say that about every single chapter. So.
You do say that.
I do.
Yes.
Yes.
I have more credibility because sometimes
I
really like them, and sometimes I don't like them, or sometimes I'm just kind of
I don't
blah.
I don't know if that's true.
But if you
That
like everything, then it's as if you like nothing.
I guess you have a good point.
Or you just like everything.
Yeah. I think the latter is actually the option there.
All right,
All
moving
right.
along.
So we're going to start off with the tale of the Fiddler of Gord in these ghost stories.
It's a sequel to the famous story Fiddler on the Roof.
It is not.
Oh.
There once was a fisherman who lived in Sandness near Papa's store.
That reminds me of a limerick.
We're not telling any limericks. No limericks.
All right. So this guy lived in Gord.
No, he did not. Papa's Tower. And he was known for being an excellent fiddler. One night, he went down on his boat to catch some fish, and the Fiddler of Gord, as he was called, brought out his fiddle and began to play, causing all the fish to swim right into his nets. Heading homewards, he heard a graceful melody and saw a light emerging from a hill. So he approached it, seeing there a doorway in the hill, and he entered with the door slamming shut behind him. The night grew long, and soon the fiddler's son was sent to look for him, and he found his father's fishing net, and it was assumed that his father had fallen off the cliffs by the sea. Time went on, and the fiddler's family moved on, and a new family moved into their cottage. One stormy night, there was a knock at the cottage door, and the fiddler, now aged and bent, realized it was no longer his family there. While many of the family members called him crazy, the old grandfather asked him his name, and upon hearing this, the grandfather declared that he had lived here 100 years ago.
Well, okay, you skipped a part. So,
Did I?
So he comes to the cottage that he used to live in, and kind of just comes in and warms himself by the fire, and then he's startled to realize it's not his family, and then he's like, where did you do with my family? I live here, and that's why they thought he was crazy. Old kook could maybe hitting the whiskey too hard.
Yes, true.
But then the old man that lived there asked him his name, and then he realized, oh, this is that guy that went missing a long time ago.
Yes, exactly. Being told that his family was dead, the fiddler proclaimed that he would join them, and so he traveled to the top of the hill, followed by the wee lad of the family. I'm going to read here from the book. And there, in a glorious symphony of sound, the fiddler played a rich and moving song that tugged at the chords of the wee lad's heart and filled his eyes with burning tears. And those tears burnt the melody into his memory, and it remained there until he died. Then the fiddler looked over at the northern star and played the tune once again and collapsed, his fiddle flying over the hilltop into the sea. And when the barn summoned the courage to creep over to the old man, he found there a body of one who had died near 100 years earlier. So he crept away home again, all the while humming a song that would haunt him till his dying day, blinded by tears and seeing not the door of a magic kingdom which had opened to welcome him to its timeless light. So what'd you think of this? I'm guessing this is one of the ones that you thought was kind of pointless.
Well, I liked it to begin with, but then maybe I'm missing something from it. But he's a great fiddler, and people come from far and wide to hear him, and then he goes out and then he lulls the fish to. I guess the fairies did to him what he did to the fish, maybe because he heard this music and he was kind of drawn to it, and then he goes through the ferry door or whatever. It locks behind him, and he's gone for 100 years, and then he just dies. I don't know, and I'm just wondering what the point was, and then I didn't quite understand what happened with the kid. I guess the kid now knows the song, the old fairy song, I guess.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the fisherman's song. Mm-hmm. But what do you know what the point was?
I don't know. I think it's just a story.
Oh.
I think you're looking too much into it. I think it's just a nice story.
You think it's a nice story?
Well, I just thought it was a good story.
Oh, good story.
A good
not
story.
Like it was pleasant.
It was not very pleasant. He dies.
Well, yeah, but it's not like he died painfully.
That's true.
And he seemed to have lived a long life in the fairyland, I guess. Mm-hmm. But he sure did miss his family.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder if it was like time was suspended or something.
Yeah.
And he didn't notice that they would be gone.
Probably not, considering he was surprised that his family was gone.
Yeah, a lot of missing parts to this one. I think.
Probably.
We could have made a longer story.
We could have. We could have made a longer story about anything in here.
Well, yeah, but I mean, these had really big plot holes that needed to be filled.
I see what you're saying.
I'm glad you see it.
Okay. Moving on to the next story. McPhail of Oesinus.
Of what?
Oesinus?
Oh.
I don't know if that's how it's actually pronounced. Somebody can correct me.
I don't know either.
More than 3 centuries ago, a man named McPhail lived in a great stone house in Oesinus with his wife, his son's wife, and his son and their daughter, who had been born dumb 13 years prior and had never uttered a word. The day came when McPhail died, and his son left that night to make the arrangements, leaving the 3 women alone in the house. As the moon hung high, a scuffling was heard in the room with the body, and the mute girl called out to her grandmother, saying that her grandfather was coming to eat her. The old woman slammed the door shut, but this did not stop the reanimated McPhail, who began to dig, carving a tunnel right under the door. Just as his head emerged, a rooster crowed 3 times, and McPhail stopped, stone dead, in his tunnel. The next morning his son returned to see his family apparently going crazy about his dead father. But sure enough, he lay in a hole under his mother's door, hands torn and bloodied. Old McPhail was buried the next day, but the hole he had dug beneath that doorway is still there, in the ruins of that ancient house, and there's been no one able to fill it. McPhail's Pit is its name, and the spirit of that man lies within it to this day.
That was spooky.
Yeah, this was a spooky one. Very much like a zombie story, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it was gonna eat her.
That is true. That is a fact.
I was most curious of why the son goes out of town to tell everybody come for the funeral. Mm-hmm. And then he comes home, and the zombie dad, dug this pit and was going to murder somebody. But they didn't even bury him that day. They waited until the next day to bury him. I'm pretty sure I would have dug the hole right then and there.
Well, he already dug the hole.
Who, McPhail or the
grandfather? He dug a hole.
Yeah, I know, but that's not where they buried him.
Yes, I know. Yeah, you'd think they would have gotten on that sooner.
I think they would have expedited the process.
Yeah, I think we should critique the logic of every single one of these stories. I think that would be very entertaining for all of the listeners.
Well, and I mean the last one was the old man. I think the only lesson is don't go into the fairy doors. Mm-hmm. And if you hear really sweet music coming from the hillside, it's not a hobbit hole.
Yeah, that is true. I'm not sure if we're supposed to really take a lesson from this. I'm going to be honest with you. I think a lot of these, especially in this section that we're going through, are just entertaining stories to tell by the fire or in the pub. Really, I mean they're good stories. I like them a lot, but I think looking for
a story if you're going out camping.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
McPhail's Pit.
Thank you for the sound effect. That was lovely. Yeah, but I mean they're very entertaining stories.
Did you like this?
Believe it or not, yes. I did not dislike this one.
Well, ranking it between this one and the other one, the first one, which would you like more? The Fiddler of the Gourd?
Not the Gourd, just of Gourd.
Or McPhail and Uranus?
Not even close. I think I like the story of McPhail more.
Why?
More entertaining, more plot twists, more, I guess, more of a filled-in story.
Yeah, it's got more visuals with him, clawing and scraping at the dirt floor.
Yes, true. Moving on to the next story, which is Tarf na Leod. On the island of Husker, there lay an enchanted loch in which a terrible water horse lived.
Now, what is a water horse? Do we know what that is?
I don't know. It seems to be like some sort of shape-shifting humanoid demonic creature almost, but it's very evil, as we see in this story. Not,
I was envisioning a seahorse.
so,
Like with the little fins in the back.
yeah,
yeah.
But, not a seahorse. It's some sort of fairy creature.
Like you could ride it. But yeah, it seemed very evil.
Yes, very evil.
Yes, you should. And then there's always like a wise old person that tells the whole village how to deal with it.
Yeah, there really is.
In the Scottish stories,
that should be your job. You should be employed by the city to go around and tell people how to protect themselves from fairy creatures every day.
Yeah, but I don't think that'll work with a cynic like me.
Probably not.
Yeah, just do what you want to do. Let's see what happens.
Oh boy.
And I don't know of any of these creatures that exist. I guess if I was given the knowledge.
Yeah, I guess you're not qualified. You don't have a degree in fairies.
There's a few jokes.
I regretted that as soon as I said it. I was worried about what you were going to say.
Yes.
So back to the story. An old man advised every person in the village. You're still laughing of the joke that you haven't told.
I'm just thinking of what it would take to be a master of fairies.
Oh boy. So like I was saying, this old man advised every person in the village to raise a bowl and to never go to the loch alone.
I'm pretty sure there are people out there that probably consider themselves masters of fairies.
Thank you for that insight.
There's a lot of degrees that are currently at universities that are less constructive and practical than getting a master's degree in fairies.
You're probably right.
Like linguistics.
Thank you for that. Yes. Anyway, as I was saying, after many years, people began to grow complacent. And one day, a woman traveled to the loch alone to do her washing, falling asleep there and waking up to see a beautiful man before her. The man asked to stay with her and to lay his head in her lap, and she bashfully agreed. Thank you. Yeah. As the man lay there asleep, she began to notice clumps of sea dirt and water moss in his hair.
You'd think she'd notice that up front, but...
you would think so.
She's kind of desperate, I think.
Maybe so. And she then saw that he had hooves, for this was the water horse.
I would have noticed that first, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think hooves would be a noticeable thing on a person.
I'm just envisioning this horseman saying, "Hey, honey, can I sit down next to you?" And he's like, has his hoof on his chin. Maybe putting his hoof through his hair that's has seaweed in it. Hey, honey, how about I sit next to you, next to the loch, and she doesn't notice the hoof hands and the hoof feet. And he goes, "Yes, can I sit next to you?" And she's like, "Yeah, honey."
Thank you for that visual.
Yes.
Yes. So the woman then took her scissors and cut a hole in her coat where his head lay, then slipping out and running back to the village for help.
Now that was clever. Mm-hmm. Like instead of trying to sneak out from underneath him, she actually cuts her clothes so he doesn't really notice, that she's sneaking out.
Exactly. The old man then called his neighbor MacLeod, who unleashed his bull, Tairv na Leod, who fought the pursuing water horse in a terrific battle that lasted days, until he beat the water horse back to the loch. The woman returned to her bed and never rose again, and nor did the bull and horse. But it is said that the horn of Tar na Leod rose to the surface of the loch one day, but he still remains there, guarding the path to the water horse.
Yeah, I wonder why she died.
Yeah.
That seemed sad.
Maybe that's just what water horses do. If you come in contact with them, you're just going to end up dead.
Like if you fall asleep because of them or with them, then...
Yeah, I'm sure there's some fairy explanation there, but I'm not sure what it is.
A very bad one.
That was terrible. That was absolutely atrocious.
All right.
Yes. Well, I wanted to mention on this one.
Oh, wait a second. With ranking them, there are three of them.
Why are we ranking these? We have never done this before.
Well, because we had a discussion about how you think they're all good. Mm-hmm. And so I want you to rank them.
I think this is...
have relative merits.
I think this one is below McPhile, but above the Fiddler of Gord.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. Good. But I was going to say, I think this is an effective strategy to keep people out of your town. Raise a bunch of angry bulls, and then if they come and try to mess with you, just unleash the bulls, and I think that would stop just about anybody who's coming to attack you.
Yeah, bulls are mean.
Yeah, they are. Especially if you keep them penned up, because that's what they were instructed to do. Never let them out of a pen.
Right.
And so they would get very, very angry.
I am not a cowboy or a rancher, but I have a limited knowledge of bulls.
Why?
We had a case that involved a guy who got trampled by a neighbor's bull.
Really?
Yes. But we won it because it was his own stupid fault. Because he had gone squirrel hunting, and he had gone squirrel hunting on his property, and he traversed the pasture of the neighbor's property where the bull was penned in, carrying 3 bloodied squirrels, like over his shoulder onto his back. Like
that was smart.
Strung up, and the bull got excited by that. Evidently, bulls sometimes get excited by the smell of blood. And they came after him. I think they're colorblind, though. I don't think the red.
Yeah, it's not actually red.
That's not like the big deal. But, yeah, so there was an expert witness in that case who's a famous expert on cattle and bulls. Last name is Granda, I think. And she was highly autistic and a brilliant woman. I think she's still alive. And she really... was able to understand the thought process of animals, especially bulls and cattle.
Interesting.
Due to her, I wouldn't say illness, but due to her, the nature of the way she viewed things. And she was very, as I understand it, she had a lot of like kind of emotional or nervousness issues. And like, I think she was really important in the restraint of bulls and cattle. There's a press that they go into like this little corridor, and this press will like kind of squeeze them, almost like hug them or whatever. It's a mechanical thing while they're getting their inoculations or whatever the case may be, and it really puts them at ease. And I think she had a modified one that she used on herself because it helped with her stress. It's kind of like having a heavy blanket, for somebody else. But it's a fascinating story. And anyway, she was deposed in the case, and she gave testimony about dangerousness of bulls and all that kind of stuff.
Fascinating. Yeah. That's a good story. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I think that ranks above the Fiddler of Gord.
Yeah,
I'll put that story there. Yeah.
Well, there's going to be more to it, but I don't know. It was very weird that somebody would sue over those kind of things, especially it was in Washington County venue, and there's a lot of people have cattle, and I'm trying to remember how far it went. I think we got even to jury selection, and finally it got resolved. But there's so many people that have cattle, and everybody knows you never go anywhere near a pasture if you see a bull.
Yeah.
And you don't really cross anybody else's pasture, period. Because you might get shot.
Yeah, true. Yes, moving on to the next chapter after that lovely discussion on bulls about origin and didactic legends. So
no, didactic.
Didactic?
Didactic,
I don't know.
Okay. Is that meaning like it
like stories that tell you like a certain way to live part of your life?
Didactic.
Yes.
Very good.
So the first story is that of Dubh Ugu Weiss. Hundreds of years ago, tall fir trees covered all of Scotland, and they housed a colony of people, but the king of Lachlan was envious of those trees and decided to destroy them. His daughter said that only she could accomplish this task, and so she went to a witch and was turned into a pure white bird. This bird flew over the land, striking the trees with a wand that caused them to burst into flames, and she soon lost her pure white plumage due to the smoke, becoming known as Dubh Ugu Weiss, or the Black Fir. The burning brought tragedy to the people of the trees, and knowing that she still had a sweet heart beneath her black plumage, a man at Loch Broom made a plan. All of the children of the animals were snatched from their mothers, and their pitiful cries soon reached the ears of Dubh Ugu Weiss, and she flew to free the animals. As she landed, the man from Loch Broom pierced her heart with an arrow, and her body was hung from a tree. The king set a crew to recover her body, but a gale struck them, and they could get no further than Loch Broom. Reading here from the book. And so it was that Dubh Ugu Weiss was buried beneath the tree where she hung, at Kildonan, at the bend of the loch at Little Loch Broom. She rests there still, a single fir tree growing atop her grave, which lies beneath a grassy green hillock. So don't burn trees, I think is the one of the morals here. Not a good thing to do.
No, the moral is if you're going to napalm an entire country, don't stop and try to rescue little baby pigs and dogs. Because that was a ruse. I don't know if you went into that. I kind of glazed over.
Yeah, I said they brought all the children of the animals away from their mothers. And
right,
that sort of
so
thing.
that she heard the squealing, and because of her soft, sweet heart,
Mm-hmm.
she pitied the animals and wanted to go down there and rescue them. So if you are, committing some sort of genocide,
Mm-hmm.
you should make sure your heart is as black as your deeds,
Mm-hmm.
so that you aren't caught and by a very clever ruse that plays upon your sympathies.
Yeah, I'll be sure to keep that in mind next time I commit a genocide.
Well, that's my beef with a lot of these movies that have bad guys in them.
I have heard this so many times. Many times.
I don't know how many times I'm yelling at the TV screen, kill them already.
Mm-hmm.
You're already going to hell. What are you going to go to super duper hell? You've already murdered like 20 people, and now
Mm-hmm.
here's the hero is. And instead of just offing them, you say something.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't they just kill the guy quickly, like James Bond movies? Kill him, and then you can lecture his dead body.
Mm-hmm.
I'm cleverer than you, more clever than you. And that bothers me.
I know.
But it also, I thought it was kind of an interesting part of the story where she's burning all these trees and destroying this entire land, really out of love for her father,
Mm-hmm.
who was distressed by, I don't know, that somebody had a better force than him. And she retained some sort of internal sweetness about her as she's, flaming an entire countryside
Mm-hmm.
and destroying their homes and their ability to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So much that she cared about little puppies and squealing pigs.
Yes.
Piglets.
Yes,
Although
piglets.
piglets are pretty cute.
They are actually.
So what are your thoughts?
My thoughts?
This is number 4.
Number 4?
Yes.
Number 4. I like the name Du Vugu of Ice. That's a good one. That's a good name. Those are my thoughts.
Do you know that in The Sound of Music,
Oh boy, what?
the song Edelweiss, which is purported to be the national anthem of Austria in the movie,
Mm-hmm.
is not.
Really?
National. It was created for that play, the musical, and has been kind of pseudo-adopted as their national song now.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Edelweiss, You know what I'm talking about?
I
You don't know that song?
No, I don't.
Have you ever seen The Sound of Music?
A very long time ago.
Oh my gosh, we should watch that. It's
Yes.
a great movie.
I've heard.
Jimi Andrews, great
Yes.
songs.
Yes, we should watch it sometime.
It's set during World War II. He's an
I'm aware of
Austrian
that.
He's not a Nazi.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I don't think he'd make it nowadays, because it's somebody who, although he's opposing the Nazis, it does show people who were Austrians, or there's like this conflict there, and it shows it's like more 3-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
There's one
Yeah, that's a. Sorry to cut you off.
One movie that I do need to see is Das Boot,
Hmm.
which is the boat, I think, in German,
Interesting.
about a submarine crew, German, and I think the commander is kind of a similar thing. He's just doing his duty, and all they're all doing their duty, although they're doing it for the Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not Nazis, but they have a sense of duty and honor,
Yeah.
and so they're going to war. And I think it's a pretty tragic movie, but I have not seen it. And it's supposed to be really good.
I was gonna say, as I was cutting you off there, that I think that's a big problem now, is that we have whole categories that are just that is bad and that is good, and you can't show any amount of nuance in anything, because if you are in this category, you're automatically labeled.
Right. Well, and I think
Because I don't want to make excuses for Nazis, of course, but like you're saying, some of them were just doing their duties, and even just portraying that sort of thing in a film would get you very harshly criticized, even demonized sometimes.
Well, and like the Civil War is very complex too.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't say there's good reasons for fighting on behalf of the South, but there were reasons, and
I'd say that's definitely more complex than World War II for sure. At least in
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know about. I mean, I don't know about more complex.
More complex.
Similar complexities.
I think.
But the Nazis were pretty bad.
Yeah.
And especially because it became fairly well known that they were out there murdering Jews and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was a war of aggression.
Mm-hmm.
They invaded Czechoslovakia and Poland and France, and then
That's why I'm saying that I think the Civil War is slightly more complex than World War II, in terms of just labeling one group as evil and one group as good.
I thought you were saying the opposite.
No. I was saying what you didn't
Yes.
think I was saying.
Yes, that's true. Of course, then you can make the same argument about slavery. It's like it's there,
Yeah.
but so few of them. It's so wild how few people in the Southern Army owned slaves.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's like a very, very small percentage, and there was all officers. You
Yeah.
know, all the guys, I'm talking like 90% of the people that fought and died in the South had nothing to do with the slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in fact, it was hurting them economically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it was hard for them to make a living because they had this free labor supply that was undercutting wages and just perverting the entire economy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really weird now that they would fight so strong for that institution in part. You know, I mean, there are other justifications and stuff, but fascinating.
It makes you think that the other justifications might have been more important to those specific people than, you know, like you said, the officers and that sort of thing. So it definitely could have been, you know, the slave trade was the leading goal of, you know, most of the higher ups. But then when you look at the actual people, you know, it was kind of like the, you know, is it, you know, states' rights thing versus like national rights thing, you know, because I've heard also people say that it was more of a thing like, you know, the industrialized North essentially seen as taking advantage of the non-industrialized South for a long period of time. So it's like how many of those reasons were more important to those people than the actual slave trade?
And the trade, you know, the tariffs that would benefit the manufacturing in the North would crush the commodities producers in the South. I mean, there was a long, obviously, I mean, I can't really cover all that in this, and I'm not an expert in it, but I think, there's too much today. There's like this, they don't make any stories that there's just a really good person. It's pretty rare, but then also it simplifies things so much on the other side. It's like the worst of both worlds.
It's like people, want, or I don't know if people want to see, but it's like people want to make movies in which like the hero, quote unquote, is real conflicted and is morally gray, but there always has to be that pure black evil person, as opposed to like,
and it's always a Russian, because it can't be a Chinese or it can't be, anything else. It's always like a Russian with a thick Slavic accent, with the tattoos, the Orthodox cross tattooed on their arms and all that kind of stuff. It seems like
sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes, like almost every time. I mean,
there are a lot of Russian villains now. I will agree with you.
When's the last time you had like an international villain in one of these things? It's not a supernatural power, like a real life fight 'em up type thing, where it wasn't some sort of at least vaguely Russian.
It's a good question. I don't know. I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Yeah, or Albanian, or it's always it's like the white guy boogeyman. What
True.
It is.
Yes. How did we get there?
I mentioned Edelweiss because sounds like Edelweiss.
That was a ridiculous tangent spawned from that. Moving on to the next story, the Pabe mother's ghost. A kindly man once lived in a cottage in Pabe. And he knew a woman's needs, so when his wife was in childbed, he made her porridge with butter, which would make her strong and ensure that the baby would be born without a murmur. That night, as he tended to his wife, a woman came and sat next to him, asking for a bowl of porridge with butter many times, and the man always gave it to her without saying a word. I'm going to read here from the book. And then the woman stood up, and she said to the man as he stirred his porridge, "There, that's what I should have had when I was in childbed myself, for I am strong now. My baby would have been born without a murmur. It was hunger that was the cause of my death, but now, as long as a drop of your blood remains, no woman shall ever die in childbed, if anyone who tends her with porridge and butter is related to you." The baby was born without a murmur then, and so it was with all his descendants. Mm-hmm. So porridge with butter is the miracle food of Scotland, apparently.
That's a very brief story.
It is a very brief story.
And the other lesson is, if some ghost sits down next to you while you're making porridge and she asks for some, just give it to her.
Mm-hmm. That's what we said about the buttermilk. If you come across a woman churning buttermilk and she offers you some, you better take it. Yeah.
It's kind of like the inverse. If she asks you for something, the porridge, give it to her. If she offers you some buttermilk, take it.
Mm-hmm. I guess that kind of says something about sort of the attitude you should have to strangers, at least at this period of time in Scotland. I think it's similar to what I was saying a few episodes back about like the Norse teachings, always welcome someone into your home and always accept what's given to you. And it seems like that's sort of the same thing here. Look out for your fellow stranger because you don't know, when you'll be traveling the road and in need of help.
It would be a good time to poison people.
It would be.
Which reminds me of another funny Cary Grant movie, Arsenic and Old Lace. which there's Cary Grant's character lives with his aunts, who are very sweet, kindly women who take in, guys would come by and they'd offer, like a salesman would come in and they'd offer him tea and crumpets or whatever, and it would be poisoned.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's a really sweet romantic comedy.
Is it actually?
And his uncle is insane and thinks he is Teddy Roosevelt digging the Panama Canal in the basement.
Oh, what do you know?
Do you know what he's really digging?
Graves.
The graves of the dead guys.
What do you know?
I gave that away. I gave away that spoiler.
Interesting. What do you think of this story? Besides, the movie. Nothing. You have any thoughts?
A neat little story, and eat your porridge, and
yes,
it'll be all right.
True. The next story is the story of Loran. There once lived a crofter in an out-of-the-way glen, and he liked nothing more than a good meal, and so he became heavy and clumsy. On a cold Halloween evening, he and his wife heard a noise from the barn, and going there, he found it empty. But he followed tracks over a hill and into the realm of fairies, then hearing voices. I'm going to read here from the book. Loran didn't run, came a voice. Didn't run at all, said another. Couldn't run at all, giggled the first. And then there was a great deal of scuffling and laughter. If only his bread were not so hard, said the other, but if Loran were fed on porridge, Loran would outrun the deer. Filled with fear, Loran then returned home, and when his wife offered him his favorite meal of oatcakes with butter and cream, he declined, accepting only porridge and milk. Over time, Loran grew strong and lean, plotting his revenge, and on the next Halloween, the same two fairies returned to steal his cattle. He chased them, catching them just before the hilltop, and they danced a fairy dance of approval, returning his cattle to him. And so it was that Loran ate nothing but porridge and milk, as all good men should.
This one hit a little bit close to home because I feel like Loran, I eat too much. Mm-hmm. I ran a half marathon last week, and my time was 1:20 per mile slower than what I used to run maybe 5 years ago.
Nice.
It's mainly because I didn't just eat porridge. By the way, we're talking about at the end of this going to get some
fried chicken. Yeah,
French fries and soda.
Exactly.
2,500 to 3,000 calories in one meal.
Yeah, but it definitely seems here like all things in moderation. That's what I was looking for.
Ancient Greek lessons from Socrates.
Probably.
I think so.
Possibly.
Plato, Socrates,
Aristotle. Maybe
one of the three.
One of the three. Yes. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it definitely seems like it's kind of easy just to get a glimpse of like the everyday sort of values in here. Like for a lot of the other myths and stuff, we have to kind of look at like big picture, how these people view the world. But this definitely gives us like a clear example of this is what you should do day in and day out. This is the life of an average person in Scotland.
And I guess he didn't get his old cattle back.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't get any restitution for the theft the year before. He didn't really get his vengeance. Mm-hmm. And so I was a little disappointed because he just did a fairy dance and said, "Oh, you got us, and here's your stuff back."
He needs to eat more porridge and kill all of the fairies.
Well, I was going to say he should have wrung the neck of one of them. There's two of them there. That'll learn you. I guess it's probably bad luck.
Probably. Probably shouldn't kill a fairy.
Well, you shouldn't leave any survivors.
True. That is a fact.
Yeah. I thought they would have a pot of gold or something.
You would think so.
Yeah. But I guess his reward is that he can now outrun a fairy.
Yes, true. Not everybody can claim to. Oh no.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
I already told that story.
Did you?
Well, the bar down in Soulard.
Yes.
Yeah, I told that.
Yes, you told that one. Yes. The next story is that of the Hug Boy. There once was a giant called a Hug Boy who lived with his wife near Caithness. And they fought often, throwing boulders and stepping on houses, and it is said that this is when the fairies began to live in hills for their safety. During one fight, his wife ran away north, and he chased her, hurling boulders the whole way, one landing in the field above Roscaire, another in the lily banks at Skyle and Sandwich, and they still have his fingerprints in him to this day. He lost his wife there, then gathering turf to build a new home, his 2 handfuls of earth carving out the locks of Harry and Stennis. He then stubbed his toe, causing his toe and some turf to fall to the ground, forming Granse. He then dropped his basket, the contents of which formed the hills of Hoy. Reading here from the book.
Really? Again?
Yes.
I think we have to have a limit of how many times you read from the book in one episode.
I'm sorry.
This is the last one, right?
I don't know, maybe. He turned towards home now, rubbing his sore head, stopping occasionally to adjust a sandal over his sore foot, and lamented his unhappy lot. For who could be so unlucky as to have lost a wife and a toe in one day?
True.
That would be a rough day. That would be a very bad day. You said you liked this one earlier. This is one that you found entertaining.
I have changed my mind.
You have changed. Okay.
I mean, it's all right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it explains why this lock is there and that lock is not, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. You know, I've changed my mind. I now don't like it anymore.
Good. I'm glad.
I think the next story is my favorite.
Yes, this one was a really good one. I really like this one.
Because it has a simpleton. You don't hear that term often.
Do you want to bring it back? Do you want to bring back the term simpleton?
I am going to bring it back. I'm going to start calling stupid people simpletons.
That'll go over well.
Will they really notice?
That's lovely. Thank you for that.
Well, he knew. This guy knew. The simpleton knew. I don't know.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts about that last one?
Not really. I mean, it's a good story explaining, the landscape.
Yeah, but it doesn't really say. I mean, his wife left, and then he just went back, and there's no real story arc.
True.
It's just
because I don't think it's supposed to have one. It's just this is why this is here, because there was a giant here once, and he chased his wife north.
It does explain why the fairies live underground.
That is true.
Big giants were throwing rocks at each other.
That is a fact. Now, this last story in this section is the 3 questions of King James. There once was a priest who was loved by his people, but not by King James, who ordered that he be hung unless he answered 3 questions correctly. Now, I really liked this section from the book here, so I think this is the last time I will read.
Go ahead.
Maybe not.
What's the last story? You're not going to read twice.
Uh-oh. Now, questions are difficult things, for there are some that have no answers at all, and some that can be put in a way that even the wisest man on earth could find no answer. And although the priest was a clever man, and he knew from the top to the bottom his great black Bible, he knew there would be traps, for who would let a man free on the back of 3 easy questions? His simpleton brother, after hearing the situation, offered to go in his stead, and the priest finally agreed, and so he went to the king's finely adorned throne room. King James first asked the man, who he assumed to be the priest, where the center of the world was, to which he responded by tapping his staff and proclaiming, "Right here." Surprised, the king accepted this, for if the world is a ball, any point can be its center. The second question was to describe how much money the king was worth. The simpleton said, no more than 30 pieces of silver, for the greatest man to ever enter the world was sold for only 3 shillings. The king also allowed that, then asking the man if he knew what he was thinking right now. The simpleton responded, "You think you are talking to a priest, and you are talking to a fool, his brother." And so it was that the stony King James rose from his throne to shake the hand of a simpleton, and then he laughed out loud. "Be free, man," he said. "Anyone who has a brother like that, and that brother a simpleton, deserves to be free. Away you go." Yeah, so this was a good one. I really liked this one. Good questions, good answers. I liked them. Good riddles. It was a good riddle game, I think. That's what you would call that.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
I was a little confused by the king's statement at the end. Anyone who has a brother like that, and that brother a simpleton, deserves to be free.
I guess it means because earlier in the story, it was kind of said that the priest was raising the simpleton essentially, because he said, if you die, then no one will look after me. So I guess it was kind of the idea that he has raised him to be this good.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. I like that.
Yes.
Good lesson.
Good lesson.
That bad king, probably.
Yeah, King James probably not loved by the Irish people. Or the Scottish people, sorry. Not Irish. That was earlier. Yes. I'm surprised you have no other thoughts on this.
Should I?
I feel like you should.
I think you should. Why don't you have some thoughts? I just had thoughts. What else do I need to say?
I don't know. You always have something to say.
Maybe I'm out of my quota.
Maybe. No, I like this one. I like really any story in which I guess there's sort of a riddle there that somebody answers unconventionally.
Yes.
I kind of like that because it thinks that you're leading you some way,
right.
and I'm thinking that there's some sort of designed answer to those questions and that sort of thing, because it's meant to stump him. And so if he says what's the center of the world, and the priest says whatever, Rome, I guess would that be the center of the world to an old timey Catholic? Were the Scottish people Catholic at this time?
I don't know. I don't know the Scottish history, but if it was a priest, I'm assuming it was it was before Anglican Church.
I would assume so. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they would be predominantly, I assume, Catholic at the time.
True.
But then the kings always struggle with that because they have like dual loyalties, so to speak.
Yes, true.
Because the Catholic Church was more of a state than it is now.
That is true.
I don't know if it's any more corrupt then or now, but
also a possibility.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have no other thoughts, that was...
I have no thoughts.
You have no thoughts.
I'm
That's surprising.
slate.
That is surprising.
I want my fried chicken fingers.
All right, that was the last story in this section of Scottish mythology. The penultimate episode of Season 2 will be covering, again, 2 more chapters. They're both real short chapters next time. And that'll be it for Season 2. We still have not decided on a book.
I've been thinking a lot about it, but I haven't come to any real firm idea.
We've been throwing out ideas. We've been thinking about a lot of things, but we should figure that out soon.
This week.
This week.
We have to. We're going to have a week off.
Yes, at least.
Because I'm going out of town. So we'll have that. We'll have some time to think about it.
Yeah. True. True. So you can look forward to the undetermined book of Season 3, all the listeners out there. Maybe by the time you're listening, Season 3 will have already begun. And you can tell us in the future, back to now, what book we chose.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the challenge.
You're trying to goad me.
I am.
You're trying to get me to go on a rant. I'm not buying into it today.
Okay.
No rants. It's a rant-free episode, I think.
I mean...
I went on a weird tangent about Austrian, Nazi, and Civil War movies, but I didn't have any rants.
That is true. In that case, this has been Season 2, Episode 35 of Unlimited Opinions. I've been Adam Bishop.
I'm still Mark Bishop.
And you can follow us on Twitter at ULMTD Opinions. Unlimited Opinions.
Yeah, but
if you just search Unlimited Opinions, that is true. That is true. Probably. I would hope so.
Nobody searched it, so I searched it and it's come up.
Oh, there you go. That's good. But you've already probably followed me before you searched.
I don't think so. I think that's when I found it.
That's how you found it. Gotcha.
How do I guess I could have put in the opinions. If I could never.
That's what I should say. Opinions on Twitter. That's how you can search for us. Oh boy.